Marco Rubio knows that America remains the greatest nation in the history of the world. This is the place where more than anywhere else, everyone has the opportunity to build a great life for themselves, no matter where they were born or what their parents did for a living. Marco knows that because he lived it. The son of Cuban immigrants, he saw firsthand how this country changed his parents' lives. He was raised with a deep belief that in this country, anything is possible. You know, I have the opportunity to have my wife Amber here with me today. Everybody can say hi to Amber. Amber and I have two wonderful children at home, and the most exciting thing in my life is the opportunity to be a dad to Briley and Sawyer. I do what I do every day in Jeff City because I want them to grow up in a state, in a country that affords them the same great opportunities that I have. I want them to grow up in a new American century. The foundation of that new American century is with us today. And it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you the next President of the United States. Let's give a warm show and state welcome to Senator Marco Rubio.
Thank you. Who was that? My boy. Thank you very much. I love you, Marco. You're not as cute as that. Okay, I'm really honored. Thank you very much for welcoming me here. In fact, some of you may not know this. It's in my book. You got to buy it and read it. I went to school in Missouri. A small college called Garfield College. It's no longer open. That wasn't my fault. It's no longer open. I really want to thank you guys, and I really appreciate that you coming here today, being a part of this event, and hearing me out for a few moments. I thought I'd share with you quickly, briefly, but poignantly, I hope, why it is that I'm running for president, why this election is so important. Because every election matters, right? And every 2 years, every 4 years, they come and say this is the most important election in a lifetime. I would argue what I said from the beginning of this campaign is this is the most important election of this generation. It's a generational choice. And what's at stake in this election is not simply what party is going to be in charge or which candidate is going to be in. What's at stake in this election is what kind of country are we going to be in the 21st century. For 200 years, it's been a special country, unique, unlike any other nation in the history of the world. But now we have to decide, are we willing to do what it takes to keep it that way? Or are we going to allow it to be a nation of decline? So the bad news is this. The bad news is that if we keep doing what we are doing now, we are going to be the... Not over there. Can you guys hear me? Because this is having a lot of problems. I don't want to listen to it.
Where did you walk?
We have to... For 200 years, this has been a special country. It's been a unique place. One of the things that's made us unique is that this is a country where it doesn't matter where you start out in life. We believe you have the God-given right to go as far as your talent and your work will take it. But now we read last week in a poll that for the first time in a long time, a majority of young Americans, millennials, believe the American dream is dead. And a growing number of Americans feel increasingly unsafe here in our own country. And so the road we are on right now, we keep doing the things that our government is doing now. We are going to be the first Americans that leave our children worse off than ourselves. And I wish I could tell you only one party shared the blame. I think one party has most of the blame. And one president in particular has a lot of the blame over the last 7 years. But too often we've had Republican leaders responsible as well, who failed to address the issues in a timely way or with a sense of urgency, who were content with just letting things move on, always arguing, we'll take care of it after the next election and after the next election, and it never happens. And the result of the challenges we face, and they are real. We face extraordinary challenges to our security, and we face real challenges to our prosperity. That is the hard truth. But here's the good news. It doesn't have to stay this way. We don't have to stay on the road we're on right now. There is a new direction available for us, but we have to do it now. And that's why I chose to run for president. When I announced I wanted to run, and I had a lot of people come to me in the Republican establishment and say, well, you should wait, it's not your turn. You need to wait in line. And I said, wait for what? Wait for more of the same? Wait for the next person in line, the most familiar name? That isn't going to work this time. The time to act is now. There's too much at stake. Because we have a chance not to leave our children worse off than themselves. We have a chance to lead the next generation of Americans as the freest and the most prosperous Americans that have ever lived. And we have a chance to make this country stronger and safer than it's ever been. That is the opportunity before us in this election. But we must take it, and we must act now. And what will it take to do that? Well, at home, it'll take two things. Number one, a government that understands that prosperity is not created by the government. Prosperity is created by the private sector. The job of those of us in government is to support policies that make America the easiest and the best place in the world for the private sector to succeed. What creates jobs in America is a pretty straightforward formula. People who have access to money. Whether they borrowed it, whether it was their own, whether someone invested in them, people who have access to money decide, I'm going to risk this money. And I'm going to start a business, or I'm going to grow an existing business, and I'm going to hire people to work for it. And this is what creates prosperity. And our job in government is to make this the easiest and the best country in the world for people to do that. And we're not doing that. We have a tax code that makes it harder to do that. That's why we need tax reform. We have over-regulation in this country that makes it harder to do that. That's why we need the regulatory budget I propose. We have a national debt that threatens us with a debt crisis. You can't be the easiest and best place in the world to create jobs if your country's going through a debt crisis. And that's why we need to bring our debt under control. We're not fully utilizing our energy resources. This is a nation blessed with an abundance of oil and natural gas. And we should have everything. I'm not against any of the other sources. Let's be the best in the world in wind, and the best in solar, and the best in renewables, and the best in biofuels. Let's lead in all that stuff too. But we are reckless if we do not fully utilize the resources we have in oil and in natural gas. In particular, natural gas. We have an abundance of that for generations to come. And it would stabilize utility prices, making it not just cheaper to live in America, but cheaper to manufacture in America. So we can be a country that makes things again. And one more thing we have to do if we want to be the easiest and best place in the world to create those jobs. We must repeal and replace Obamacare. Every candidate for president will tell you every Republican candidate will tell you that they're against Obamacare, and they are, I believe. I'm the only candidate for president running from the Republican side. I'm the only candidate for president running at all that has ever scored a victory against Obamacare. Built into Obamacare was a bailout fund, which last year would have been $2.5 billion of taxpayer money, your money, that they were going to use to bail out insurance companies that lost money on the Obamacare exchanges. So last year I was able to get a law passed, or in a law language, that took that bailout money out. And so this year the insurance companies came to Washington and said, hey, we lost money on the exchanges, where's our taxpayer bailout? And the government says, well, the money's not there anymore, they took it out last year. And so the insurance companies are now saying, and we did it again this year. And so the insurance companies are now saying, well, guess what? We're going to stop advertising that we sell Obamacare. And in fact, some of them are now saying, we're going to drop out of Obamacare. And what that tells you is that the fundamental promise of Obamacare was a lie. Obamacare doesn't work unless we bail it out. Obamacare doesn't work unless we subsidize it. We need to repeal it. And we need to replace it with a system that puts you in charge of your health care money, not the government. That allows every American, whether it's money from your employer that you don't pay taxes on, or a refundable tax credit, every American will control that money. And they will be able to use it to buy any insurance they want from any company in any state in America that will sell it to them. If we make America the easiest and the best place in the world for the private sector to succeed, The American private sector that is made up of the most creative people on the planet and the hardest working people in the world will not just create millions of jobs, it will create millions of the best paying jobs we've ever had, 21st century jobs. But those jobs are going to require different skills, and more skills than jobs have ever required. So we also have to make it easier and cheaper for people to acquire those skills. Now, for many people, that's going to still mean 4 years of college, and I have nothing against that. How would we have college football without 4 years of college? But it's gotten way too expensive. Student loan debt in America is over $1 trillion. And part of that is because these schools have no competition. Only the accredited schools can give out loans and accept financial aid. And part of it is because there's not enough information out there. So one of the first things that I would do is I would create alternatives to the student loan. I talked about one. It's called the Student Investment Plan, which allows promising students, especially graduate students, to get their tuition paid for by a private investment who invests in them the way you would invest in a startup business. And if you graduate and become financially successful, the investment group makes their money back with a profit. They made a good investment on a person. And if you don't become financially successful, they made a bad investment. They lose their money. But it's better than a loan because it doesn't sit on your credit report. The other thing that we talked about doing is providing more information. When I'm president, before any young American, or any American for that matter, takes out a loan, they will be told how much people make when they graduate from their school with a degree that they're seeking. So you can make an informed decision about whether you want to borrow $50,000 to major in Roman philosophy. Or if you want to, I'm not saying you shouldn't. I'm just saying the market for Roman philosophers has tightened over the last 2 decades. My point is that at least you get to make an informed decision about whether it's worth borrowing the money to pay for that. The second thing we need to do is make school easier to access for non-traditional students. People that are a little older, they have to work full time, they're raising a family, and they can't go back to school, but that's the only way they're going to get a raise. Why can't they go back to school? Because they can't go during the day because they got to work, and they can't go at night because they have kids. So guess what? They're stuck. It's the single mom who makes $12 an hour as a receptionist. If she can become a paralegal, she can make $50,000 or $60,000 a year. She has to go back to school, and she can't. That's why we need competency-based learning programs that allow you to get credit for what you already know, or what you've learned on your own, online, through work experience, through life experience, through military experience. Give people credit for what they've already learned. And then whatever they're missing, allow them to package it from a variety of sources, including night classes, weekend classes, online classes, more work experience. The point is open up higher education to more options so more people can get the skills they need. So the paralegal making $12 an hour can make $50,000 a year. So the home health aide making $9 an hour, making $9 an hour can make $50,000 or $60,000 a year. These are better options than what we have right now. The last thing I think we desperately need in this country is we need more vocational training. We need more vocational training. We don't have enough. Some of the best paying jobs in the 21st century require more than high school, but less than 4 years of college. And we stopped training people to do that work. We stopped training people to do that work. I will be the vocational education president. I will make it easier for people to acquire these skills. One of the ways we'll do it is we're going to open up the Pell Grant. We're going to open up the Pell Grant to high school students so that if your school doesn't offer vocational training, then you will be able to go to high school in the morning and then use Pell Grant as a 15 or 16-year-old to go to trade school in the afternoon and evening. And when you graduate from high school, you don't just have a high school diploma. You are industry certified and ready to work as a welder making $50,000 a year. Or a machinist, or a car technician, or an electrician, or in the construction trades. These are good jobs, and I don't know why, for the life of me, we started telling people that these jobs weren't as good as the ones you can get when you leave college, because it isn't true. So if we can make America the easiest and best place in the world to create these jobs, and we can make it cheaper and faster for people to acquire the skills they need for these jobs, we won't just save the American dream, we'll expand it to reach more people than ever. And we won't just have an economic recovery, we'll have an economic renaissance. But none of that will matter if we don't do the most important thing the federal government does. And that's keep us safe. The federal government was never designed to run our school district, for We don't need Congress. We don't need a federal government intervention to take this far. But the one thing the federal government has to do is it has to keep us safe. And the world today is a dangerous place. Okay, you have a lunatic in North Korea with nuclear weapons. You have the Chinese undertaking the most rapid military expansion in the history of the world. You have the Russians sowing instability in Europe and in the Middle East. You have a radical cleric in Iran, the Ayatollah, that's about to receive $150 billion of sanctions relief, which they're going to use to sponsor terrorism, which they're going to use to buy or build a nuclear weapon. And then you add to all of that the risk of radical jihadists, particularly ISIS, a group that's grown not just in influence and power, but in sophistication. A group that now recruits Americans to join their cause. One of the killers in San Bernardino was an American citizen, born and raised in this country, a health inspector with a newborn child. And yet, all of a sudden, from one day to the next, took up arms against America, killed 14 people, wounded 20 others, and would have killed a lot more had it not been for the bravery and the courage of those men and women in law enforcement in California. These threats we face are real. And in the face of these threats, what are we doing? The president's destroying our military capability. Do you realize these budget cuts that he supports, they're not doing anything to balance our budget? Nothing. Because defense spending is not the cause of our debt. But these budget cuts are going to leave us very soon with the oldest and the smallest Air Force we have ever had. You think about that. The oldest and the smallest Air Force we have ever had. It's going to leave us with the oldest and the smallest Navy we have had since 1950. It's going to leave us with the smallest Army we have had since before World War II. How can it be that the world is growing more dangerous and our military is growing weak? And then you look at our foreign policy. It's confusing to our allies. In 7 years, the reputational damage that Barack Obama has done to America has no precedent. Our allies do not trust us anymore. Literally, some of our strongest allies in the world no longer trust us. Our adversaries no longer respect us. The result is a foreign policy catastrophe. The next president of the United States, from their first moment in office, will have to work to deal with both of these things. And if I am honored with the chance to be president of the United States, the first thing I will do is rebuild our alliances around the world. I will quickly make it clear to all of our allies that America is back, that you can rely on us to work with you to confront our common problems. We'll mean it. We'll reposition the missile defense shield in Europe so that our European allies, especially in Poland, know what we're doing. We'll back up our rhetorical talk of our Asia-Pacific region by providing the additional carrier group they need to ensure that China does not take over the South China Sea, the most important shipping lane in the world. And our strongest ally in the Middle East, the only pro-American free enterprise democracy in the Middle East, Israel, will know that we have their back. Because I will make it clear to the world that all these crazy resolutions they pass at the UN to sanction Iraq, to sanction Israel, America will veto. I will make clear to the world that if Israel is attacked and they run out of ships, or they run out of planes, or they run out of bullets, or they run out of rockets, America will resupply them. And on my first day in office, I will cancel this president's deal with Iran. I will work to rebuild our military again. We will modernize our Air Force. We will expand our Navy. And we will once again bring our troop levels to a sufficient strength so that this nation remains the strongest military power in the world, capable of defeating any adversary or any risk that we face now or in the future. So these are our challenges. And I run through them not to discourage you, because it's important for us to be realistic about our challenges. We need to know what they are. But I also run through them to point out that we can fix them. That none of these challenges that our nation faces are insurmountable. In fact, some of them are self-inflicted. We created them upon ourselves, and therefore we can fix them. That's the good news. The good news is we still have time to get this right. The bad news is we're running out of time. We can't afford another 4 years like the last 7 years. And that's why this election is so important. What we are being asked to do in this generation is not that unique. And here's why. America's never had it easy. There has never been a generation in our history that had it easy. When this nation was founded, it did so by declaring independence from the most powerful empire on the planet. That was not easy. Then this nation faced a civil war that almost ended the young country. That was very difficult. Just a few decades after that, this country found itself in what they called at the time the war to end all wars, the First World War. It was so bloody, so painful. It was a continent away, but it impacted us. As soon as World War I ended, this country almost immediately found itself in a Great Depression, the most traumatic economic experience the world had ever known in modern times. Just as the Great Depression was starting to ebb, we got pulled into a Second World War. And in the early days of that war, it wasn't even clear we were going to win. The Second World War ends, and at that point, of course, we enter a period of peace and prosperity, and the world is perfect, right? No. Almost immediately, the Cold War began, and it lasted decades. A Cold War so dangerous that any miscalculation could have ended life on Earth as we know it, and almost did during the Cuban Missile Crisis. The 1960s were a hard time for America. This country was divided regionally over civil rights. It was divided generationally over Vietnam. The 1970s was not easy. Our president had to resign in disgrace. We had long gas lines. By the late 1970s, we had American hostages being held in Iran, and we couldn't do a thing about it. My point is, when has America ever had it easy? Every generation in our 200 plus years of history has faced great challenges. And yet somehow each generation left the next better off. Because each generation confronted their challenges and in the process embraced their opportunities. Now the time has come for us to do our part. That's why this is a generational choice. Now the time has come for us to do our part. And we are all called to this task. And we are all the beneficiaries of the extraordinary miracle of America. Every single one of us, the privilege, the honor, and the blessing of living in the single greatest nation in the history of mankind. That is what we inherited. And now we must decide if that is what we will keep. Or if in fact we will forever be known as the generation that lost this special country. I have always felt a special obligation in regards to this because, you see, America doesn't owe me anything. It's important to say that as often as possible. America doesn't owe us anything. But we have a debt to America. I have a debt to America. And I have a debt I'll never fully repay. America is not just the country I was born in. It's the nation that literally changed the history of my family. My parents weren't born in America. They were born on the island of Cuba. And they came here in 1956 because it was the only place in the world where people like them had a chance. You see, they were born into a society like almost every society that's ever existed. A society like the one I described at the beginning of the speech. A place where they tell you what you're allowed to do. If your parents are rich or connected, you get to succeed. If they're not, you got to get really lucky or you get stuck. They weren't happy with that. And so they came here because it was the only place on earth where people like them could have a chance. My father had it particularly difficult because when he was 4 days before his 9th birthday, his mother dies. And so he has to stop going to school and start working. And you know, he never really went back to school after that. And he would work for the next 70 years of his life. Now, when my parents came to America, they didn't have it easy. They struggled, and they never became rich or famous. But they became successful people. They became successful people. You know why they were successful? Because the American dream isn't about how much money you make. It's about achieving happiness. And my parents achieved happiness. Working as a bartender and as a maid. My parents were able to own a home in a safe and stable neighborhood. They were able to raise their family and retire with dignity. And they were able to leave all 4 of their children better off than themselves. That last point was the core of their American dream. You see, their very purpose in life after they came to America became to give us the chance to do all the things they never did. To make possible for me all the things they themselves never had a chance to do. So my father worked for many years, well into his 70s, as a banquet bartender at hotels. He worked on nights and on weekends and on holidays. He stood behind one of those small portable bars in the back of the room. So one day I could have the chance to be anything my talent and my work would allow me to be. The journey from behind that bar he stood at to the life and the opportunities I've had is for me the essence of the American dream. That happens to be my story, but that really is our story. For who among us is not a generation or two removed from the same thing? Who among us did not have grandparents who did that for our parents? Or parents who did that for us? Or maybe it's you doing that now for your children. And here's why remembering that is so important. Because at the end of the day, what truly makes America so unique is not the fact that we have rich people. Because every country in the world has rich people. And we're grateful. We celebrate financial success. It's amazing, really, that we are 5% of the world's population, but we have 40% of the world's millionaires. Pretty amazing. And most of those millionaires are people that didn't inherit that money. It's an amazing statistic. But every country in the world has rich people. You can go to the poorest nation on this planet, and you will find a rich person somewhere. Here's what makes us special. The millions of people that aren't and will never be financially rich. But they work hard, and they persevere, and they achieve happiness. Through hard work and perseverance, they're able to open up that business they always wanted. Or they're able to have the job they always wanted to do. They love their work, and will never make them rich, but it pays them enough to own a home, and retire with dignity, and raise a family, and give their kids the chance at a better life. That is the backbone of our country. And if we ever become a country where that's no longer possible, we're just not special anymore. And so what will determine whether or not we remain a special country is whether people can still do that. What will determine whether we're still a special country will largely be decided by what happens to the people that clean our hotel rooms, and park our cars, and mow our lawns, and fix our automobiles. By the people that get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and then work 2 jobs to provide for their families. By the single mother who is struggling to provide for her children the chances she never had. By the father who works all day and then goes to school at night in the hopes of a better job so his family will have the chances he never did. They exist among us by the millions. And perhaps it's the story of some of you here today. Whether or not people are allowed to achieve their dreams is what will determine whether we remain special. And in the end, that's what we're fighting for. For 7 years now, the political left in this country, led by Barack Obama, have told our people that this is truly no longer possible. That we need to become a country now where the government gets to choose who wins and who loses. But we know better. We know that the reason why free enterprise works so well and it made America so special is because it's the only economic model in the history of the world where you can make poor people richer without having to make rich people poor. It's the only economic model in the history of the world where you can lift everybody up without pulling anyone else down. Every other economic model says this: give me power so that I can take stuff away from one group and give some of it to you. We say, allow us to help you help yourself. Let us put in place the policies we need so that free enterprise can thrive, and the employee can become an employer, and the worker can become the owner. And you can move ahead and you don't have to pull anyone down in the process. We can all be better off. But now the time has come for us to apply these principles to the unique challenges of the 21st century. For we can't win this election if all we do is rely on the people we've had before. As Republicans, the Republican Party has to unify. We can't win without a unified party. We can't win. We can't win unless we can keep together all the people we already have. But we can't win only with the people we already have. We must bring new people. For a long time, when we used to say that, they would say, that's why we need to become more like the Democrats. And that never made sense to me. Because we already have a Democrat Party. Why do we need 2 Democrat parties? What we need to do is to apply our principles of limited government and free enterprise and a strong national defense to the challenges being faced by people that haven't heard from us for far too long. And for me, that's not a political talking point. That's where I come from.
That's where I grew up. That's what my family still faces. That's what makes our country unique and special. And that's why this election matters so much. Because we have a unique opportunity in this election to define the direction of the greatest country in the world. And there are only two choices before us. America will either be greater than it's ever been, or it will be a once great nation in decline. And we get to write this chapter, and it begins in this election. And if we do what needs to be done, then we'll not just save the American dream, we'll expand it to reach more people and change more lives than ever before. The 21st century won't just be as good as the 20th century. It has a chance to be better. It has a chance to be that new American century that's the slogan of my campaign. It has the chance to be the greatest era in our history. And that is why, no matter where you live, in any of the 3 or 4 states we're trying to reach here today, I'm asking you for your vote. I'm asking you for your time. I'm asking you for your activism. I have nothing against the other people running. I really don't. I like them all. We are fortunate as Republicans. None of our candidates is a socialist. None of our candidates is under FBI investigation for the use of drugs. But in this election, we have a chance to define not just America, but what it means to be a 21st century conservative. What it means to be a 21st century conservative is we are going to embrace the promise of the 21st century. For we do live in a rapidly changing time. The new economy is not like the old economy. And it's going to disrupt some things. But it's also going to create some incredible opportunities. The jobs we've lost, we have a chance to replace with better jobs. The industries that have gone away, we have a chance to replace with better industries. And the threats we face, we can not just face them, but defeat them. In this election, if we do what needs to be done with your help, we can be the authors of the greatest chapter in the story of the most amazing nation that man has ever known. And that's why I'm asking you to vote for your help. So that when the history of our time is written, here's what it will say. It will say that in the early years of this new century, this generation faced a changing and uncertain world. But like all the generations before us, we rose up to the challenge. We confronted our challenges and embraced our opportunities. And because we did that, there was still one nation on earth where you come from did not decide where you went. There was still one nation on earth where anyone from anywhere could achieve anything. There was still one nation on earth where even the son of a bartender and a maid could have the same dreams and the same future as the son of a millionaire or the son of a president. But there was still one nation on earth that inspired people to believe that not only can we govern ourselves, but we can decide our own destiny based on our work and on our talent. Because we did our part, we left for our children what our parents left for us, the single greatest nation in the history of all mankind. So thank you for having me.